Good evening, good evening. Welcome to the first recording of Let's Talk, Our Personal Economy. I am your host, Nina Fletcher, and this is the show that reminds you that your dollars create conversations. So, without getting too much off course, let me give you a little background on myself. My name is Nina Fletcher. Most of you who are tuning in probably know me as a singer, songwriter, and a progressive jazz artist. I was in the progressive jazz artist circuit for approximately 10 years or so. I first hit the scene with a outstanding group called the Arpeggio Jazz Ensemble back in 2005 and had my first published recording with them in 2006. From that point, I became a soloist and released a solo CD back in 2010. And since then, I've been continuing to write and continuing to do shows. And if you've ever been to any of my shows, it is all about the music, but it's also all about us and our community and how we interact with one another. And in continuing in that tradition, I'm going to go ahead and forge ahead with a new talk show. This is going to have a bit of a different spin on it, however. Um, this talk show is more about our personal economy, in addition to my music career as a songwriter and also a performer. I also did hold a career in the mortgage profession for quite a few years. As you can imagine, it was a very, very interesting career because in the particular profession that I was in, I would see how people transacted their money, how the saving patterns that people in certain communities indulged in prior to making large purchases. And I was also able to see how members of our community went about making large purchases, as well as our savings patterns, our credit patterns. And I began to realize that, money is very, very much a conversation. Uh, it's a conversation had without even opening your mouth. And in some ways, I think there are other communities that are very, very aware of this. However, in some other communities, in my community included, uh, this concept is sort of missed because we typically do not talk about our money. We are more inclined to discuss what we do with our money. We are, in terms of whether we've purchased a new car or whether we've tried the new hair technique or went to a restaurant and was able to purchase a $300 or $500 bottle of champagne. So in terms of the way I'm sorry, we had a little bit of a technical dysfunction. So I'll pick up where I left off. So, in terms of the way that we spend our money and the things that we spend it on, be it cars or whether we've recently gotten our hair done, a new pair of shoes, those feel good types of things. We are very, very open about talking about those things. We also have to understand that the person or the entities that we purchase from are very open to listening. So while we're speaking within our communities of the things that we were able to purchase or able to do, because, oh, now I've got this great job, now I have this, now I have that, and I'm able to get that new in-class Beamer or that new in-class Mercedes that I wanted. And we are not demonizing those things. By any means, we are not. We are talking strictly from a financial or money circulation perspective, and not judging those of us who have those things. We need to have more of a dialogue created within the community. And if we do that, especially within the Black female community, I feel that it's possible that we can have our dollars bounce a few more times before it leaves the community. So what do I mean by having our dollars bounce a few more times before it leaves the community? Well, here's what I mean. When you go to work and you earn your paycheck, or when you receive payment due or the income due from your self-employment endeavors, what is the first thing you buy? That would be considered a bounce. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, the first thing that you buy would be food. So we're going to the grocery market, we're picking up certain things. That would be considered, say, a first bounce with your income or the money that came in. That is a bounce that didn't necessarily benefit your community first before it left the community, but it did benefit your personal economy, because now you're able to feed yourself and those in your household. So let's talk about the other things that we may purchase that possibly could bounce within the community or benefit another female or Black female business prior to leaving the community that you belong to. I've noticed quite a few people who may have a business creating toiletries or creating bath and body products. If there is not a low cost, efficient way for you to include that particular part of your expenditures in your grocery bill, is it possible that you may be able to go to someone who has a home business that may be selling toiletries and bath and body products online and assist their business? It's just a thought. Because if we thought more that way, then our personal economy would be more in a circular motion, as opposed to directly out of the community and not having any effect on anything. So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about with this particular show, and also other ways that you can hold on to more of your money and have a different type of dialogue and different type of conversation with those outside of your community with your dollars. We're going to take a quick break and I'll be right back. Okay, and we are back, and I wanted to give you a little more insight with regards to what the show is about. In my research and pretty much in observing our financial circulation or our money circulation habits within the particular community that I belong to. I've noticed that there are four major places in terms of debits or ways that money leave the community that affect us the most. And I believe the first one would probably be food. We eat a lot of fast food, and I completely understand. We live in a very, very fast-paced environment. Not only that, but most, if not all of us, especially if you're self-employed, or a lot of others of us who may have been in corporate America, we are technically putting in 10 and 12-hour days. So what does that mean? If you're putting in a 10 or 12-hour day, your day is starting at 7 o'clock. You're barely eating a lunch, and if you eat a lunch, you're basically either going to the corporate cafeteria or you're running 10 minutes up the road to the next place where you can order something out. And then on the way home, after working 10 to 12-hour days, we do not necessarily want to be in the kitchen. So you and I both probably have been known to spend money bringing food in for dinner so that we can readily sit down and just eat with our families. Well, let's just sit down and think about that for a moment. We wake up in the morning, and then the first thing we do is grab a cup of coffee and maybe a donut, something quick, not necessarily the healthiest thing. And if you were like me a while back, that would constitute a $5 cup of coffee, sometimes 6 or 7, depending on whether I wanted the caramel syrup in my mocha latte or whatever it was. In addition to a $3 muffin, $3 or $4 muffin, depending on whether you wanted it warmed, etc. So right there, you've already spent close to $10. Then comes lunchtime. Now, if you're from the 90s or you were working in the 90s, I'm sure you all remember the $5 deals. You were able to go to McDonald's or Burger King or whoever it was. Not that I'm promoting those brands or doing anything with those brands. I'm sure they all do very good business. But, you go out to the fast food giants and you'll spend $5 back in 1999. Well, those days are long gone. Most of the time when you come away from a fast food, either drive-through or walk-in, you have spent between $7 to $10 on lunch. So already your tab is probably to about $10. Now, dinner is another story. If you're, feeding for 2 or 4 within the family, you can spend upwards of about, $50 to $60 on a decent dinner, bringing in dinner to feed your family. Well, let's do the math. What kind of conversation did we just have? We had a breakfast conversation to the tune, and we're going to round up. We had a breakfast conversation to the tune of about $10. We had a lunch conversation to the tune of about an additional $10. That's $20. And then at dinner, because we all know it's multiple times a week that you're too tired to cook, let's be real about our money here. We then have possibly a $50 conversation about our dinner and what we're bringing home to our families. So altogether, we're having probably about a $90 per day conversation with companies that are outside of our community or outside the benefit of our community. 90 times, let's give it a break and say 2 nights a week you do cook. So we'll say 90 times 3 or 4 times a week is probably about $300 or $400 a week, maybe. Okay? So, regardless of the income bracket that you are in, there are things to be aware of with regards to the type of conversation that we're having with companies, with businesses regarding our money. And there are ways to balance out that particular part of the budget and realize the fact that you are a very busy professional and maintain a very healthy standard of living at a much, much lower tune or much, much lower cost than $300 or $400 a week. And that is not an exaggeration. During my best earning days of corporate America, I went ahead and decided to collect all of my receipts, and I did so for the month. And to my surprise, because I was so busy and because I did eat out so often, I did spend probably close to about $1,000 eating out at other restaurants, etc., because I was so busy, in addition to having a home budget for food at home. So this show, is about the different things that happen in our lives that happen so quickly that we do not realize the impact or the conversation that it is having with other entities outside of the community. And it's also about waking us up to ways that we can use our dollars to have an effect to assist another woman who may have a business, or another black female, or someone within our community that has a business. And it's not all for females, males as well. I'm sure that I have quite a few listening, and I am betting on the fact that I have a diverse community listening as well. So we need to have a very open conversation about how we're spending our dollars. And I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Welcome back. And during the last break, we discussed how our conversation, or our money conversation with food has a huge impact on the way we do business. The next two areas, or the next three areas that have a huge impact, would be beauty. Now, just touching lightly on beauty, and I'm going to do pretty much a whole show on this. Let's think about this for a moment, especially for my black females. Beauty. And I know it's a touchy subject, but I have to discuss our hair. Do you realize that most of us incur? Now, if you are someone who is, say, seeking a job, or seeking a contract, or seeking some type of benefit from a self-employment meeting with someone else, we actually have a prerequisite dollar amount. Now, everyone has to basically come in a clean and pressed manner. Of course, your dress is in good order, and you make sure all of your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. But with regards to our hair, we spend more than any other community making sure that our hair is in order. Why? Because we have the impression that our hair has to be straight. Now, I know I am not dealing with the sisters who have the weaves or who press and curl, because to be honest with you, okay, I must admit I never did the weaves. I did at one point do a wig because I did the big chop. And I did frequently do a press and curl. But when I realized and when I added up the amount of money that we spend, even pre-interview, this is before you even qualify to get that contract or to take that self-employment contract or to take that employment W-2 from a corporate entity. Before you even go to that route, many of us are spending at least $200 on a weave or on hair care alone just to be seen by an employer. We need to explore and see if there are ways that we can cut that expense. Because I've known too many people, especially in our community and in my particular demographic, where you will spend this money and you'll go to the interview and think that you have it, find out that you do not have the job, and now you have about a $200 debt, or you couldn't pay the young lady in your community that opted to do your hair for free and have you pay her later. This is something that happens very, very frequently. So with regards to beauty, we'll be having some conversations in regards to how we can have our budget in check until we have a definite analysis of the cash flow that will be coming through our new contracts or our new employment. The next area we are hit is music. Music, believe it or not, and we're going to speak about that. And the last thing is, I will say, health. So there are 4 major areas where we are hit in the pocket that can actually be placed in check if we have a personal economy conversation. And that would be food, beauty, music, and health. So at this point, we're going to take yet another quick break, and I'll be right back. Wow, it's amazing how time flies. My time is actually up. I look forward to having you tune in to me next week at the same time to discuss further how we can make a better impact with our dollars. I'm your host, Nina Fletcher, and you are listening to Let's Talk Our Personal Economy. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.